Hello, this is Paola Guthrie from Creating Purpose with Pao. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network and her network on Zingo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download Zingo TV app in all respective app stores. While you download the app, please make sure to rate it and leave a comment because we enjoy your feedback. The app is totally free. Zingo TV is also available in Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Stick, Roku, and Roku sticks, as well as all TVs from 2016 forward. Thank you for being here today. Today in the house, we have Joseph Mcclendon III, one of the most sought after ultimate performance specialists in the industry. With a doctorate of neuro psychology and a coaching list consisting of Academy Award winners, Olympic athletes, Fortune 100 CEOs, and even royalty. He has the ability to create rapid personal change, moving people to take consistent action towards where they ultimately want to be in life. Joseph is not only formally trained with a PhD in neuropsychology, he also holds a dozen certifications with neuroscience, taught at the University of California, Los Angeles for years. He's delivered hundreds of workshops, coaching sessions, keynote addresses, seminars, training programs, and interventions, presenting live to over 5 million people around the globe. At his core, Joseph Mcclendon III is an expert in coaching people to overcome behavior in inner and outer obstacles. And now he's licensing and certifying others to do the same using his proprietary methodology and programs. Welcome to the house, El Señor Joseph Mcclendon III. Thank you for being here.
Gracias, and thank you so much for having me here, Paola. Good to see you again.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. So please share with us who was Joseph before you discover the beauty of neuroscience and neuropsychology.
Actually, well, I had a really good childhood. I have great parents, or had great parents. They passed on, and they taught me lessons in life, humility and tenacity, and all those things. However, when I was 17, a little older than 17, I live in America, and three grown men tried to take my life because of the color of my skin, and it wasn't so much what they did. I mean, obviously, they physically hurt me, but the things that they said destroyed me. The things that they said made me lose my certainty, my confidence in myself, and I became homeless. And but what changed my life and turned me towards this direction of the neurosciences and helping people was somebody helped me, somebody that I didn't know, somebody that was just a kind individual, gave me a book and saw that I was hurting and said, read this book, it'll help you. And the book was called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I read the book, and I always tell people, I not only read the book, but I did what the book said. And I was desperate. I didn't have a home, I didn't have anything, and I did everything the book said. And my life changed. And when I went back to the guy that gave me the book to thank him, and I said, you've changed my life. What do I do for you? How do I give back to you? And what he said to me was, he goes, Joseph, you repay me by doing the same thing that I've done for you in whatever way that you can for as many people as you possibly can. And that's honestly what set me on this path of doing what I do right now, because I want to give back and I want to help other people as well.
That's beautiful. And I appreciate you, and a lot of us appreciate you for taking that, this path. So what was the moment? What was the moment that you found purpose in your life? What was the moment that you said, okay, I'm trusting this process, or hope? Where's the moment that you can share with us that you can say, no more? It's like my life is changing now.
Well, it was the night, ironically, before I met that gentleman, because I was at the bottom of my life, and I was suicidal, and it was at a point where I realized that if I didn't change right now, it was two things. And I remember this. Realized in that moment that if I didn't change right now, it wasn't worth going on. But then, because of what I had been taught as a child, it was, you don't. If you're going to look at what you're going to lose, also look at what you're going to get if you do something else. And I remember in that moment thinking about, well, if I do change, then I get to have a better life. And I started thinking about all the things and people around me that had things. I started thinking about remembering all my own talents and skills and things like that. And that was like the carrot on the stick. And I remember that night actually being excited about what I didn't even know was coming up. That I didn't know that my life was going to change that next day. But I remember going from being depressed to being excited, even though I didn't have anything. And in that moment, I realized, well, that's part of the key to life is to, I always say this, you've heard me say it 1,000 times by now, Paula, always look where you want to go. Always ask the question, what do I want? Not what do I not have and what do I don't want? I didn't know the science behind it then, but doing that moment was the specific moment that I realized, just wait a minute, look where you want to go. Instead of continue, look where you don't want to go.
Yes, yes. I want to pause for just a little bit and make our audience aware of language. The language that we use in our everyday life can make a difference in someone's life. It could be a positive or it could be negative. So Joseph is sharing with us his experience where he heard, like very ugly language, and somehow his brain programmed it, picked it up and make him feel that it was true. So we need to be aware of how we express, when we are guiding others, or if we're upset, like let's watch our language, because language matters. And then
Very,
another thing, go
yeah, very well put, because it's science. It's the words that you speak to other people and what we say to ourselves, because what they said to me, I heard their voices in my head over and over. It changes the way the blood flows through your system. It changes the chemicals in your system. So very well put, Paula. That was really nice.
and then second of all is like, if we are in a dark spot right now, Joseph is teaching us that he had to look at what he wanted. We have to learn to see, like, well, what do we want, and begin to look for a more compelling future that we think sometimes we're in a dark spot and we will not get out. But if we give us the gift to say there is a brighter future for me, like if we can find the strength to imagine, a better situation, because that's what Joseph did. And he turned his life around, and we're so blessed for the job that he does. So, how do you keep yourself humble?
Giving,
Giving.
giving. Yeah, if you can't give to somebody else, and I mean from your heart, without realizing that you have a privilege, that you're blessed, and being and feeling blessed is humbling in itself. So when you see somebody that and you help somebody else, and you change somebody else's life, that humbles you. That makes you go, because you have to go outside of yourself, and you have to care about other people, and you have to it makes you realize again how blessed you are to be able to help that person. So I would say that's the biggest thing that I would say that I try to teach people, and for myself as well, is there's no room for arrogance and being all about yourself if you're caring and you're giving to other people as well.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned that, is like, I want to share something with the audience that I learned from you. I've learned from Joseph that if I focus in myself, like if my focus is only on me, I create my own suffering. Like
Yes.
because I'm all, like I'm focusing on, like, oh, they're mean to me, or they didn't smile at me, or they didn't tell me how good I did on my spelling bee. Like if we focus on ourselves, we create our own misery. And Joseph has taught me that when we begin to think of how I can help others, how can I improve their lives, how can I express love, gratitude to others, then that's whenever we begin to experience like a happy, joyful life. So I'm glad you share that. So it's in helping others then that we build that humbleness. Because I experienced that this 2 weekends ago, and I was like, how is he so humble? Because Joseph will not take, you will not take a compliment, because you would give it back. That's one of the things I noticed, is like, you're always giving them back. And I'm like, wow, he must be full of love.
Well,
uh,
I've had some hard lessons in that as well, and I'm still learning it as well. I I I graciously take a compliment. If you give me a compliment, I'll thank you, and I'll always be sure to give you a compliment back, even if it's just a thank you. And the reason is that I want people to recognize that if you say something nice about me, I'm not going to just take it and just go, okay, well, that's great. I'm so great. I want people to recognize that I'm looking for the beauty and the good and the love in you as well, because that's what people want to feel.
Thank you. Now let's move to parenting for just a little bit, because you're a dad of a teenager. And
Yes.
there is parents out here in our audience that have teenagers in their family. So what is an advice that you would give us
Yeah.
to build a good relationship or continue the good relationship with our kids?
I can tell you my biggest aha, and it's the advice that I give to anybody that has teenagers. Number one, remember you were a teenager once as well. And physiologically, from the ages of 12 to 17 years old, that child's brain is actually physically growing faster than it did in its whole life. You see, up until 12, it grows incrementally. But once they hit 13 years old, it doesn't grow that much bigger, but it grows faster than it really did. And that is why teenagers feel like they know more, because they're expanding and they're getting brighter, and their world is getting bigger. And so I remember for myself, I wasn't a good student. I wasn't, I pray to my parents. I thank them every day because of what they tolerated with me. Uh, but I look at my son now, and I tell people with teenagers, look at them, and before you scream at them, before you do anything at all, step back for a minute, calm down, and just go, they're teenagers. They're not human beings right now. They're teenagers.
Yes.
And so they're going to go at their own pace. I'll give you an example. I'm a very active man, and I'm very visual. I move fast, I talk fast, and everything. And my son is the opposite, the absolute opposite. My son he's very kinesthetic. He's very slow. I mean, he's an awesome kid. I love him. And I remember when he was little, he wasn't. When he was little, he was really active and everything. And I thought, that's my kid. But as he got older and he turned into a teenager, he's just like, chill. And like for me, I want him to go, I want him to be ambitious about stuff. And I had to realize that, wait a minute, this is his life. It's not mine. And let me, like I teach in neuroencoding, let me relate to him on his level where he is. And sure enough, as soon as I started to chill and didn't come at him, that way, then he started to come around as well. And now we have a good rapport. So I just have to remember that, you know, my biggest advice is just remember you were a teenager as well. So step back and take a look and think about what you wish your parents or older or adults would have, how they wish you wish they would have treated you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, 'cause sometimes we forget.
Yeah.
we uh so now some of us, or I discovered neuropsychology, neuroencoding like just about a year ago. So could you share with us, for some of our audience here that have no clue what neuropsychology psychology is, what neuroencoding is, could you share with us what it is?
Yeah. I'll start by saying this, Paula. Our lives are governed by our psychology. And when you say that to most people, they go, oh, okay, well, I don't know what that is. But as you know me, and that's one of our number one tenets of neuropsychology is to assassinate complexity, to make things simple. Just remember that psychology is just the thoughts that you have about yourself, about other people, and the world around you. That's it. So if you think you're a good person, if you think you're ambitious, if you think you're lazy, if you think that's your psychology. That's it. Don't make it any other complicated. If you think that people are bad or good, that's your psychology. If you think that the world is a good place and an abundant place, or it's terrible and scary, that's your psychology. And so when we go look inside of our own psychology and go, what do I really think? What do I really want? What do I really think about myself? Then you'll get a sense of why you do what you do. Now I'm giving you obviously the real quick version of it, but then that's what we do. The second tenet that we have, and I'll tell you what neuroencoding here is a second, is there are processes to change it. Because if you go, well, I'm afraid of this, or I procrastinate, or whatever, then you go, and I see somebody in the uh, comments here said, yeah, what do I want? That's always our first question. What do you really want? And then we have processes to change ourselves to them. So to get that outcome that we want. So neuroencoding is essentially, it is the skill to program ourselves and help other people program themselves and help program them to automatically default to their best thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And what that means is that you can, just like you program you program your app, you tell Siri what to do and it shows up here a little bit later. You can program your own psychology so that when something shows up that would have normally stopped you, that would have made you procrastinate or hesitate, or your fear or whatever, you automatically default, or you automatically go into a state of, oh, wait a minute, this is possible, here's what I can do. And so that's what we call it, encoding, programming ourselves so that we choose the behavior that we want to have, and then we program ourselves to have that behavior even in the worst of times. Now that was a real quick overview of everything, but
But it's amazing. It is amazing once you get the hang of it, of trying to shift your psychology to what we think, dominates how we feel. And then what
yeah.
we feel dominates what we do. And what we do dominates what we have. And I learned that from Joseph. It's no
I got this big smile on my face, Paula, because this is, I mean, you are exemplifying what we teach, and you know it, and you're such a great example of that.
thank you. Now let's go to the work, because that's my field is like the workforce. Like let's talk about imposter syndrome. Like, you know, how can we build better leaders? Because the way I am trying to change their lives is like to to help them see that imposter syndrome does happen, especially to our beginner leaders that are
Yeah.
starting a new position. So could you help with describe what imposter syndrome is and what are any strategy or two that we could use?
Yeah. What we're helping people do is get out of the, first off, realize that the only thing in their way is themselves, or the biggest thing in their way is themselves. And then how to get out of the way. Imposter syndrome is when inside your own psychology, in your own mind, you're thinking, remember, this is about yourself, other people in the world around you. You're thinking that, well, wait a minute, I'm not as good as they think I am. And if they knew, then they would reject me. And that's a loop. So if you look at, remember, psychology is what you think about yourself. So if you think of yourself that you're not as good, then right there alone, that's part of your psychology. And if the second part of it is I'm not as good as what they think, then you're thinking other people maybe think you're doing their thinking for them. Okay. And then that means then the world may reject you. They may reject you. And if they found out, they would reject you. And so that stress that comes along with that, it means you're in your own way, because half the time they're not even thinking what you're thinking. More than half the time. I always say to people, why are you worried about what other people thinking about you when half the time they don't even like themselves, let alone you? And what if you're wrong? What if they're thinking you're great? And as you know, with our presentation strategies and processes, we teach people to be able to enter somebody else's world and help them recognize that you and create connection with them, so none of that stuff exists anyway. And so imposter syndrome is just that. It's an imposter. It is somebody, it's in your brain. You're going, what if they think, and by the way, you're presupposing that they're thinking something bad about you. I don't operate that way. One of the things that I do, and in terms of creating leaders and helping leaders, is to teach them to assume first that they are great and that other people think that they're great as well. First. Now the reality is everybody gonna think you're great? No, people don't think I'm great, But if I feel like I'm okay, And remember, that's part of programming. And I enter their world, then I enter with an energy of certainty, and that's what a leader needs. And that alone will help change people. And along with the skills of being able to connect with people and communicate with people and help them feel good, it's a home run. That's why in neuroencoding, we teach that, first off, you got to get connection, and you want to create rapport with them first, so that you hedge the bet, so that you stack the deck in your favor, so that that conversation or whatever you're going to communicate to them is going to go smoother than if you didn't do that.
Beautiful. Yes.
And lastly, let me say this: while you're doing that, you don't have time to have imposter syndrome. You don't have time to have imposter syndrome, because once that clock starts, once that you go on stage, or once that you're in front of somebody, or once that you're teaching somebody, it's game on. Imposter syndrome happens before. Imposter syndrome happens while people are sitting worried about, well, what about this meeting I'm going to do? What about this going to that? That's when it all happens. Once that clock ticks, you're on, and it's what shows up. So if you spend your time working on yourself, and working on getting yourself to look at what you want, how you want to feel, what you want to be, and then spend your time learning how to communicate with other people, then that time you not only get better at it, but then when you show up, you're better as well.
Yes, I love it. Yes, what do you want? It goes back to the basic question that you have taught us is like, well, what do you want? Okay, you want to be an outstanding leader? Okay, what do you need? What are the strategies and techniques that you need to develop to show up with authority and with a good heart as well? So yes, I love because I've been there before. I've been there where it's like I didn't believe in myself. I didn't trust that I was enough, or I didn't have what I had. So now it's like it feels so good
Yeah,
helping others to like, you're good enough. You know what you're doing. You just have to learn how to show up.
yeah.
So thank
And
you.
people forget that they do get better. People forget that part of life is you get better as you go along. So whatever you're not going to, as you start doing something, you're not going to be as good as you will be in a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year, 10 years.
Yes. And it's like, it's who we become through the journey, right? And sometimes we just want to know that we're perfect and we just want to show up perfect. But it's like, no, 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 no. There's so much growth for all of us. And
Yes.
yes. What about ADHD in the workplace? I know you have helped lots of people with ADHD. And
Yeah.
ADHD, it could be a superpower, right? A lot of great people out there have been able to use their ADHD to help others. So could you help us like talk about
Yeah.
ADHD in the workplace?
Yeah. First off, I want to be clear that even though my formal education is in neuropsychology, I don't do therapy, and this is not therapy now. So anything that I say to you is not. I'm obviously not going to recommend medication or getting off medication or anything like that. But this is not medical advice that I'm sharing with you, nor is Paola. It's important you know that, because these are just strategies. This is just coaching. And so here's what I'll say. Uh, all joking aside, and I'm serious, this everybody has ADHD, and everybody has, and it's exacerbated because of this. ADHD is attention hyper. I'm sorry, attention hyper dis. Excuse me, I've got it right now. uh, attention hyper dis. Oh, I forgot what the initials were, but it's we have a hard time focusing on things. Okay, uh,
Yes.
a deficit disorder. I'm sorry. Um, and so because we are distracted so much, remember, whatever we do the most and whatever occurs in front of us the most is what we're going to default to. And obviously there's shortcuts to get around that, but um if we have distractions all the time, which we do, whether it's your computer, whether it's somebody else or whatever, then guess what? Then it's going to take us away from what we should be focusing on. Now, are there chemical imbalances in people? Yes. But here's what I found, and here's how I've been able to help as many people as I have been able to, is let's start with, what's the first question?
What do you want?
What do you want? In other words, when somebody comes to me, like if a parent comes to me and says, my son, my daughter is suffering from severe ADHD, attention deficit disorder, hyper disorder, okay, I go, okay, great. What do you want? And they go, well, I don't want them to have this anymore. And I, right there, I know they don't know what they want. I say, what do you want? And then and through a process I go through, I help them realize I want my child to be happy and I want my child to be able to focus better. And I say, so great. So let's take a look at some of the causes that might be there. And I'm going to tell you right now, more than 70% of the time, it's diet. It's diet. It's diet and this here. Nowadays, it's no, in my opinion, there is no coincidence that the levels of ADHD, diagnosed ADHD, has risen over the last 10 years since this thing has been out, and we've been putting this in the hands of not just everybody but our children as well, because it is designed to not just take your attention in the moment, but it's designed to keep you addicted to it and keep coming back to it. I mean, just think about it. Go back and look at the numbers. Look at the numbers of how much it has risen in adults and in children. And we're giving these things to our kids. And so one of the things that, and again, the level of sugar that people are putting into their bodies, all of those things contribute to the fact that the body is trying to heal itself. The body is trying to get what's called stable datum. So if I can help somebody else take a look at your diet and get them, cleaned out, and then let's take a look at what are the influences that you have in your life based on what you want. And then some of the processes that you and I know to do that, I help them do that. And then lastly, I'll say this, that parent or that child, if we're talking about a parent-child situation, they have labeled themselves or that child as having something wrong with them. And as you know from the event that we just did, that identity is their psychology. So if the child feels like there's something wrong with me, they're going to think that, and they're going to live in stress. The chemicals that the body is releasing, the stress hormones that they're going to be releasing, are going to make them feel that way all the time, and it becomes more and more of a loop. And they think to themselves, why can't I do this? Why can't I focus? Why can't I do that? With all of those things compounded, it just makes it more and more. So diet, identity, and then the process of diet. First, I'll figure out what they want, and then take a look at diet, and then take a look at the influences that are in their lives, and then change those things, and then give them the skill set of developing a new identity. That yes, you're just distracted. Half the time when I work with people, I say, do you have ADHD or are you just distracted? And most of the time they'll go, I'm distracted. And I'll help them prove it. I'll go, tell me what your phone number is. And they'll tell me what their phone number is. And I'll say, so tell me, and I'll have them give me some things to help them realize that when they do focus, and they're out of their head of that stuff, then they don't have ADHD, or at least it's mitigated. So if you can help people realize that they already are what they want, you just want to expand it, then they get their fingernails in the wall so they can start climbing it.
Okay, thank you for sharing that.
You're
So
welcome.
in the workplace, I just have to remind them of who they are. Then it's like, what do you want? And like, who do you want to become to achieve what you want? So
Yeah, I would say if the conversation comes up, Paola, if the conversation comes up about ADHD, tell them what I just told you. Here's what it is, and take them through the process that I just did right there. Let's find some things. Do you really have ADHD, or are you just distracted? Just that question alone is going to interrupt their pattern. And then go, here's what I learned. You can blame it on me if you want. That ADHD is oftentimes diet related, and it's exacerbated by the amount of influences and the types of influences that you have in your life and that you continue to have in your life. So let's take a look at those and let's help you get where you want to go. Because oftentimes, especially in something like that, when you help a person realize that this is really what it is, then that person goes, okay, well, then I can fix that. I can do something about it. And there's maybe I'm not, maybe I'm there's nothing wrong with me, or maybe I'm not as bad as I thought I was. Psychology.
yes. And here goes back to what you were saying right at the beginning. Like when I ask you, well, what is neuropsychology? And he says the psychology is like, what do we think of ourselves? What do we think of others? And what do we think of the world? So I would like for all of us to like take just a second to like think into those three components that he just talked about, our psychology. The reason why is because we walk around this world thinking that we're not enough, that we don't have enough, that we just don't have a beautiful life. We don't appreciate what we have most of the time. And then we think that people are against us or that they don't like us, or, that whenever you need them, they're not there for you. So that's ours. We're choosing to think that way. And then sometimes if we look at the exterior, which is our world, we begin to think, well, uh, the government, politicians, the school system, and then we begin to think, like sometimes negative thoughts about it. So we create our own like tornado. So Joseph is inviting us through neuroencoding, through neuropsychology, to shift the way we think about ourselves, to think that we do matter, that somebody loved us enough. This is something I learned from here, and I want from him, and I want to pass it down today for some reason. It's like
Mhm.
somebody loved you enough for you to be here today. Because Joseph,
Exactly.
could you share about like when you're a baby that you need so much love to
Yeah,
survive?
yeah. Human beings are the only animal, or the only animal that is reliant upon other people, its parents or somebody else, to give it its physical and emotional needs, and that's really important. We'll come back to that. Longer than any other animal on the planet. Other animals, when they come out of an egg, they don't have somebody there that's going to breastfeed them or anything. They come out of an egg. They know how to eat. And they have instincts, and they're only around that parent for a short amount of time. I think the longest other animal is an elephant, and I think it's only 3 years, 3 or 4 years or something like that. Human beings, you know 10, 12, 13, 15, some of them 30 and 40 years old, that they're reliant upon other people. But we're reliant on them in the very beginning for our physical needs, to eat and to be taken care of, and to move around and things like that. But we're also reliant upon them for our emotional needs as well. Years ago, there was an experiment done. It was a terrible experiment, and it was done by, I forgot the physician's name, but it was called failure to thrive syndrome. And what they did was they took these babies, and they did AB, and they took some babies, and they held them, and these were orphans, they didn't have parents, and they held them, and they talked to them, and they fed them, and they caressed them, and all those things. And the other babies, they put them in a box. It was called a Skinner box, and they didn't touch those babies, and they didn't say anything to those babies, and they fed them through these hands, like rubber gloves in there. They fed them that way, so the baby didn't have any contact with human beings. And those other babies that did not have the contact were smaller, weaker, and some of them even died. And so we need that from other people. And if we don't have it, then guess what? And by the way, that's why our Creator put in us that need to have people around us. That need, and that's why the fear of rejection is the number one fear that people have. And so what happens is, if you don't do anything about getting over it as you get older, because you don't need other people around you now for those. We want them, and it's great, but you don't absolutely need it, and you're not going to die if somebody doesn't like you. And so if you don't work on yourself to go, I'm fine, I'm a good person, and I'm a great person, I love myself, and other people are great and I love them, and the world is a great place. If you don't do the work on that, so that at least that's in your psychology, then you're going to be afraid throughout your life. Then you're going to go through your life hesitant. You're going to go through your life, and you're not going to think you're good enough, and you're not going to feel good and be happy through your life. So that's why, as you said, we stress that. That is why we have, at the risk of sounding arrogant, we have the answers to the problems that everybody wants. Everybody wants to feel loved. Well, you got to start with yourself, but most people don't know how to do that, and that's what we show people how to do.
Yes, thank you. Yes. And imagine if we walk, through life thinking, everybody loves me,
Mhm.
everybody likes me. And you might think, no, my mother-in-law don't like me. I will
Yeah.
tell to you that if she looks into your soul, she would love you and she would like you. It's like as one of the coaching sessions that I had, Joseph, and I thought of you And that popped in my head where I was like, no, everybody loves you and everybody likes you. And if we would adopt that, then you would be changing the step number 2 on our psychology to thinking,
Yeah,
how others think of you.
yeah.
So
With this caveat, I always add, and if they don't, that's okay too. They just don't know me. Because not everybody, the truth of the matter is, I can say that, but the truth of the matter is not everybody's going to like me. There's going to be people that are out there that don't like me that because of the car I drive or because of the color of my skin. But what it allows me to do is not focus on them. So I add that. I go, everybody loves me wherever I go. I'm a good person, so I'm lovable and likable and everything. And if they don't, that's okay too. They just don't know me yet. And in that way, I get to be realistic and recognize that there's a real world of, there are some bad people out there. But guess what? This is where it's going to sound cosmic. Energetically, I move those people away from me. Energetically, they stay away from me. Energetically, I don't attract those kinds of people in my life.
because you love so much, you're full of love, so you're going to attract people that want that love, that want to share the love with you.
Yeah, and I love
So
them, and they feel it.
yes. Yes, you do. I'm a witness of it, and it's surreal. It's surreal. So, what has been one of your biggest challenges through your profession?
My teenage son.
You couldn't crack the code with him.
Well, if I've ever given anybody the impression that I'm infallible, that I'm perfect, and I have no faults, I apologize because I'm human, just like everybody else, and I go through things as well. And so, in terms of my biggest challenges, were times that I've had to go back and recognize that I'm in my own way. And I'll give you a perfect example. I have always been the kind of person had always been the kind of person that felt like if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. And it's what drove me to get all my certifications and to do everything that I do. And I had to do everything myself. And I had, I had a very, very small team of people. And so when I realized that, wait a minute, I'm not moving at the level or speed or an impact as many people as I possibly can because I'm working by myself or I'm working on myself. So it wasn't too long ago. As a matter of fact, I've always had an assistant. I shouldn't say always, but mostly had an assistant or things like that. But last year, year before last, I sat down and the team now that I work with right now. And that's where the neuroencoding came from, because that's always been my dream and my goal to do that, to create a facility that I could teach other people what I do. And now, so my biggest challenge was getting out of my own way to go let other people that are better at what they do be part of my team and grow a team. And now I have a team of about I want to say, well, you saw the people on the stage there. There was probably 15 people on the stage there, and all of those people, they're amazing people, as you know that, and everybody there does something way better than I do, and that's why they're there. And so that was one of my biggest challenges of getting out of my own way. Even though I do this, I practice it, I still have to go back and check and go, wait a minute, I can use some improvement here. I can use some change here.
Beautiful. Yes. Sometimes letting go, it's challenging, but you've
Yeah.
been able to impact probably more people by allowing to grow your team.
Yeah.
Yes. So is there anybody, like if there's anybody here in our audience that would like to know more about neuroencoding, is your team enrolling anybody right now? How could we get more information for those that might be want to certified into neuroencoding and help others?
Well, thank you for that. And the answer is yes. Let me tell you why I'm going to answer it the way that I'm going to answer. I have this saying, Paul, and the saying is that those of us that dare to dream while the rest of the world is having a nightmare, we're not only going to create the abundance we want and make our own lives better, but the best part about it is that we're going to be shining examples for other people to that they can accomplish more and they can make a difference and they can be better and they can be happier and they can be healthier and they can be more financially abundant. And that, by the way, is what I call wealthy. And so the reason why we created the school is because it's my legacy, and I want people to have the skills to change themselves and change other people as well. And so the answer is yes, we are enrolling people in, and if you want information on it, and it's for you, and it's for, if you're a teacher, a coach, or a mentor, whatever. It doesn't matter if you want to use this for yourself, and I especially encourage people, because you hear me as I teach it. I want you to learn this so that you can teach it and you can help other people as well. And so you can go to either my website, which is josephmcclendon.com, or you can go to neuroencoding. I think it's on the screen behind me. neuroencoding.com. And it's easy to find, and you can go there. There's some videos that'll tell you about what it is, and yeah, we're it is something. And as you know, Paola, one of the most important things that I wanted to make sure, and it is, and it's part of my team, is that there's full support during and after. And what that means is that as you're learning the process and you're learning how to do the processes to change yourself and to change other people, you're going to learn that. But then what you do with it, and you're going to have questions, and you're going to want to take it further. We've got a support team of people that have weekly calls with you, live calls, and take care of you until you don't need us anymore. Because one of the worst things that has happened to me, and I know it's probably happened to you as well, and a lot of people out there, is like, you go get certified in something to learn how to do something, and then you get your diploma or your certification, and it's like, okay, figure it out, you're on your own. And that happened even in my formal education. Even when you have a college education, when you're done, you get a diploma and you're on your own. There's no real support. So with neuroencoding, there is 100% support. And it's one of the things that I'm the most proud of with my team. So go to neuroencoding.com, or you can go to my Instagram, which is I am Joseph Mcclendon. It's right there on there as well.
Yes. And I would like to tell you all that it makes you a better person. It's like it has made me a better mom. It has made me a better wife. You can ask my husband if you see him around, how I've changed, because my psychology changed. It's like I'm responsible for my own psychology. I'm responsible for the way I think about myself. I'm responsible for the way I think of others, and I am responsible for the way I think about the world. Nobody else is. So I can create my own joyful pathway through life now. As before, I put all my weight for some reason on my husband. I thought it was his job to grow and to get better financially and to get better as a husband and as a father. For some reason, I had the wrong psychology. So, it's like we all need neuroencoding in our lives just to become a better version of ourselves.
I would agree.
So you have to meet him. He has a lot of stories to tell you about, like before me, before neuroencoding happened. So now tell us about, like, you say your team. Like, how can these people be supported by the team? Well, I'm gonna say it if you allow me to. When you enroll into neuroencoding, you're not alone. When you enroll into neuroencoding, you have a huge community that becomes your family. It is in like magic, like they're supporting you through the week. There is at least 3 calls a week that you show up, and they're supposed to be about an hour, but the instructors are so kind and full of love that if you have more questions, they stay a little bit longer. So it is a community. So if you need a community of people that support you, you will not only be learning new skills, but you also will be a part of a family. So I just wanted to add that up because I don't feel alone.
Plus there is, and no, I'm glad you did, because that is so important. Remember earlier I said that we as human beings have a need to have people around us. And I encourage people to have like-minded people around. So it's not only the weekly calls, we have a Facebook group, and that is just, as you know, from there has exploded, because then it's like-minded people. See, people tell me all the time, well, what if my husband doesn't support me in what I'm doing, or my friends laugh at me and things like that? Then, that's great. Let them be what they're going to be. And you have a place that you can go where you're going to be around people that that are supporting you and that kind of thing. And so it doesn't mean you have to throw those people away. It just means that your time is going to be better spent with people that are like-minded, that are moving in the direction that you want, especially for something like this. So we have 100% support. I love what you just said there. You're not joining alone. There's, we're getting close to 1,000 members that are neuro, and they're making a difference all over the world. You know this, that there were people from Nigeria and from England, and I mean they were from all over the world, and it's amazing. We're really making a difference.
Yeah, from South Africa as well. So,
Yeah.
uh, yes, and like Joseph said, is like if you are a teacher, if you are, like a coach, or if you're a part of the a company that you might want to learn more about, like how to deal with your psychology. And then once we heal ourselves, because Joseph Mcclendon III has a phrase that he says, physician healed by himself. So I learned to heal myself first. And once, I got healed, then I felt like giving back. And that's why I became, leadership trainer and a life coach, as well as a brain health trainer, to give back. So it is a mission, like he said, it's part of his legacy. Before you go, we still have about like 9 minutes, but how can we create that connection uh, with our loved ones? Let's say they don't know anything about neuroencoding. They don't know about like how to shift psychology, but how could be a few steps that we can advise our communities to spread the love? It begins with a connection.
Yes. I'll answer the question by telling you a true story. That you've heard this story before, and whenever I tell a story like this, I always tell people, it's not you that experienced this story, but you can tell my story to other people so that they get it. Well, first off, connection is what it really means is that you have an energetic transfer of a psychic energetic transfer of energy. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you two examples. Have you ever been sitting in your car and you feel somebody looking at you, and you look over and there they are looking at you? Everybody. And vice versa. You look at somebody, maybe it's an attractive person or an interesting person in a car next to you or somewhere, whatever, and they feel you looking at them, and they look over and they catch you. Happens to all of us. What has happened in that moment, and this is science, it's not something I made up, and you can go look on YouTube, look up Carillion photography. There's a camera that can take a picture of your electromagnetic energy field that every living thing puts off. And it is just that. It's electricity, it's energy that's put off. It's like when you see those night vision goggles or heat goggles, you see it generates heat. Well, this is energy that you put off. And what they found is when you put your attention and intention on another person, four things happen. Number one, your electromagnetic energy grows. Go look at it, you can see it. The second thing that happens is that person or those people feel it. The third thing that happens is their electromagnetic energy grows because they have that feeling. And the third thing that happens is you become connected. And it's all simultaneously, it happens, and that is an unseen force. That is a psychic, energetic transference of energy. And so the story I wanted to tell you is this. So the answer to the question is connect with them first through your energy. And the way that you do that, I'll tell you the story. I was a musician, and I lived in this small town. You and I were talking about small towns earlier. And in the small town, it was very, very small. And everybody knew everybody, and everybody was polite. You'd walk down the street and you'd go, hey, how you doing? That kind of thing. You'd say hello to people. Well, when I moved to Los Angeles, nobody would do that. I remember walking down the street. I just moved there from that small town. I was used to people, saying hello to everybody. But I'd walk down the street and people would just ignore me. And I thought, well, these people are terrible. This is awful. No wonder Hollywood is, plastic and all that stuff. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if it's not them? And I thought, of course it's them. I'm friendly. I'm saying hello. And they're just blowing me off. And then I thought, okay, well, what could I do to help them or to connect to them? And I created something that I call my 50-foot rule, which is the answer to your question. And that is anybody that comes within 50 feet of me, I'm going to look at them and I'm going to say these words to myself: I love you. I don't have to have a reason why. I just say it. Because as soon as I do that, those four things that I just said, my energy grows, they feel it, their energy grows, and we become connected. And did you know it was just a very short amount of time? People, and this was before cell phones, by the way. Nowadays, everybody's looking at their cell phone, and it's a little more difficult. But people had started to look up, and people started to be friendlier to me, and people, and I started to feel better as well. Because remember, that was part of my psychology. Is I said it. Well, people suck. People are, this. That's part of my psychology. I was believing that about people, but that changed. And if I started going, I love you, I wouldn't say it out loud. I just say it to myself, and I directed that for that person. Then everything changed. So when you enter a room, whenever you go anywhere, whatever, that's what you want to do. Love them first.
When you're at the grocery store, this is what I learned from Joseph. It's like if you're just shopping, he taught me, he's like, just think of them, said, I love you. And you don't have
Yeah,
to say it. You just have to think, like, I love you. You're just sending that love.
yeah, and you're
And
putting on energy.
yeah, so if you needed a takeaway from today, that's our last huge message for you to begin to just send love. Just think when you see that person, even if we don't know them, uh, just, shopping, you can just send the love and say in your head is like, I love you. Thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for everything you've done, for your love, and for being so humble because you are an example. Truly, I truly mean it. You are an example of a true leader.
Thank
Any
you.
last you're welcome. Any last message that you want to say right before we go?
I do. And first off, thank you so much because you are not only helping me recognize my dream, but you're doing something that most people want to do, and that is to impact other people's lives. And I appreciate the work that you do, and I appreciate the people that you've changed. And the last thing that I always say to people is this: remember this, that life is exactly what you dare to make it. And fortune favors the bold. Whatever you consider fortune. I always tell people your fortune is to be wealthy. Wealthy means to be healthy, happy, and financially abundant. So the trick to life is to boldly step up and dare to make your life magnificent. I thank you so much for your trust. And
Thank you
Paola,
so much. This
welcome.
show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check spanglishworld.ca for all news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Blessings to you all, and thank you for being here.